Hey you guys! I have a great, easy beginner's yoga routine that's a wonderful alternative if you weren't quite able to keep up with the pace of the intermediate strengthen and lengthen flow that I will link to in the little information card and in the notes below the video. If that was a little bit too fast-paced or maybe not enough instruction for your level of yoga experience, then I think you'll like this routine as an alternative way to really strengthen and also lengthen the muscles of the hips and the pelvic floor. The only equipment you'll need for this routine is a yoga mat, and 2 yoga blocks is highly recommended. If you don't have yoga blocks, you can also use stacks of books, something nice and sturdy that you can rest your hands on. Again, I do recommend purchasing yoga blocks, though they're fairly inexpensive and you can find them in sporting goods stores or online. I'll link some sites in the notes below the video. So when you're ready, let's go ahead and get started with this gentle beginner's yoga flow that's wonderful for strengthening and stretching the muscles of the hips and pelvic floor. Begin with your yoga blocks at the front of the mat. You might need them for the first stretch. So begin standing and hands at your heart. We're just going to reach up overhead and then down into a forward fold. Now, your knees can be bent with your hands on the mat, or as I stated before, you can use those blocks. I like to use my blocks on the tallest height and really focus on keeping a nice hinge at the hips, working toward straight knees, but the knees can still be softly bent even with blocks. Every time you breathe in, think about extending the spine, straightening the spine, and looking forward. Every time you breathe out or exhale, see if you can fold forward just a little bit more and deepen that stretch. You should feel it along the whole back side of the legs. Now, bend your knees and come on out of this stretch. We're going to do it again. So bring your hands up and then hinge forward into a nice forward fold. You may use the blocks again, just as we did before, or hands on the ground. Again, your knees can be bent. You do want to work them towards straight as you get more and more flexible. But the key here that I want you to really integrate is the breathing. When you breathe in, you straighten your spine. When you breathe out, you fold forward just a little bit more. Breathing in, lengthening the spine, looking forward. Breathing out, fold forward just a little bit more, hinging at the hips. Should feel really good. Nice stretch along the backs of the legs. Now bend your knees and roll up, and we're going to move into a chair pose. This is a great strengthener. Engage your core, your pelvic floor, and your low abs. Pull them in. You want to sit back like you're sitting into a chair. Hands at your heart, or if you're more advanced, overhead. In the inset, I'm showing you a close-up of what's going on here. I'm kind of wiggling out my hips, feeling like my sit bones are widening apart without overly arching my low back. Be sure that you're not overly arching your low back. You want to gently tuck your bum under, really engage those deep abdominals, and really sit back. We're going to have the opportunity to do it again. But before we do it again, just stretch one leg at a time. Nice. Wiggle back and forth. Pedal out your knees. Hamstring stretch. Bend your knees and back into the chair pose. So take a deep breath and engage your core and sit back in the chair pose. Hands at your heart. And again, feel that you're sitting back far enough that you can actually lift your toes off the ground. Wiggle out your bottom so that you really feel your sit bones widening apart. Feel that you're lifted through the front of the core and lengthened through the tailbone. Your heart is lifted. Do not let your lower back overly arch. Keep that core strong and remember to sit back. Keep breathing. And then down. Walk out those legs again. Pedaling out the legs, bending and straightening one leg at a time. And this time I want you to really just work yourself into this nice stretch. Go ahead and hold one side in the stretch and really use your hand to kind of rub out the back of that leg. It's really nice to make that physical connection with your own hand onto your own muscles that are being stretched. So rub out the other side now. Really take this opportunity to give yourself a little massage. Hands on the blocks, and go ahead and round yourself up to a full standing position. Roll out your shoulders, and we're gonna move into a balancing sequence here that's going to be working up toward tree pose. So stand up nice and tall, core is engaged, and you can definitely be holding onto a wall for support and balance. Engage your core lifted through the pelvic floor and the low abs, and then try placing your foot on your calf, your inner calf. Now, you're going to go back and forth between touching the ground with your tiptoe and touching the inner calf with your flat foot. So just under your knee, touching that area just under your knee. Touch and then touch the ground. Just back and forth. Try not to let the hip of your standing leg jut out to the side. You want to stay tall and lifted through that standing leg. Shake it out. Do a couple of quick hip circles each direction to kind of ease out the tension that has built up in your hips. And then again, engage your core. We're going to do the same exact thing. Strong through the core, lifted through that standing leg. Touch the inner calf right below the knee with your flat foot. Back and forth. Keep breathing. And let it go. Shake it all out. Couple of hip circles to work out any tension that's built up in your legs or your hips. Same thing, other side. Zipped up and strong through your core, lifted through the crown of your head. Touch the inner calf below your knee with your flat foot. This is, again, the other side. Stay strong and lifted through your core and keep breathing. All right, let it go. Let go of any tension, release it, and we're going to do it again. 3 or 4 times. Zip up and strong through the core. 3 or 4 times, you're going to touch the ground with your tiptoe and then touch your inner calf with your flat foot. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Keep breathing nice and strong and lifted. Don't let the hip of that standing leg jut out to the side. And shake it all out. Shimmy it out. Release any tension. Do a couple of hip circles each direction. And let's move on to the full expression of the pose. So we're going to go into tree pose. So this is a great balancing pose, great strengthening pose for your hips and your pelvic floor. Lift through the front of the core, lengthen through the tailbone. Place your flat foot either on the calf, below the knee, or on the inner thigh like I'm showing here. This is the full expression of the pose. You'll see that I kind of lost my balance. That's okay. Trees sway in the breeze. It's okay if you lose your balance. Just make sure that you're lifted through the front and lengthened through the back. Make sure that your hip is not sticking out to the side like being shown here. You want to really feel that you are strong and tall through that standing leg, engaged through the core, and pressing the bent knee so it's pointing straight out to the side. You'll feel like you're working that hip of the bent leg. Feel that you're working that leg back. The bent leg presses back. Again, the bent knee is pointing straight out to the side. Strong and lifted through the standing leg, lifted through the core, and breathing steadily. Find a focus point to gaze at, just one single point in front of you. Now release the pose. That is such a wonderful strengthener for the hips, but you're probably going to have a little tension built up. So let your hips just wiggle back and forth. Do what you need to do to rock yourself out of the tension, relax, and we're going to work on the other side now. So engage your core. Lifted through the front and lengthens through the back. Same exact thing. You can either be right under your knee or on your inner thigh with that flat foot. I will go back to the inner calf, so under the knee now. But again, if you want to be all the way up toward your inner thigh, that is okay. Just make sure that the bent knee is pressing back and really the knee is pointing straight out to the side, not forward. Lifted through the front, lengthened through the back. Don't let the standing hip jut out to the side. You want to pull it in. Be tall and lifted through the crown of your head and that standing leg. Breathe steadily and evenly. And again, find that focal point. That's called a drishti, which is a gaze point that you can use to focus your attention on. It'll help you to keep your balance. This is a wonderful strengthener for the outer hips, the entire leg, the core, the pelvic floor. Keep breathing. Couple more breaths. You're almost there. Keep that focus and release. Put the leg down and just jiggle and wiggle out those hips. I like to kick my legs side to side and just release again any of that pent up tension that occurs in your muscles after you've been working them hard. So we're going to move on to a different pose. We're going to move on to a nice standing wide-legged forward fold. So turn your feet so they're pointing straight ahead. Feet nice and wide, bend your knees, and place your hands on your yoga blocks. Wiggle your hips side to side and feel like your sit bones are widening apart. Feel that your pelvic floor muscles are stretched between the two sit bones. They're widening apart. Every time you inhale, you straighten your spine. Every time you exhale, you hinge forward from your hips a little bit more. Again, every time you inhale, you straighten your spine. Gaze forward. Every time you exhale, you hinge forward from your hips a little more. Knees can be softly bent or they can be straight. It just depends on what's comfortable for you and what your flexibility is. Bend your knees, put your hands on your hips, and then come on up to stand. Go ahead and turn your right foot forward. Your left foot is parallel to the back of your yoga mat. Lift through the front and lengthen through the back. So you're lifted through the pelvic floor and the low abs and lengthened through the tailbone. This is called warrior two position. So you can be by a wall for balance if you need that support. But you want to think about your front leg. So again, my right leg is my front leg here. That knee is bent. Try to sink as low into that bent leg as you can. And the heel of that front leg should be in line with the arch of your back foot. So if you need to adjust anything, go ahead and do that now. Your gaze is forward over the front outstretched arm. And again, sink a little lower if you can. Keep breathing. And then straighten that bent leg. Rotate the feet so you're really just doing the exact same pose on the other side. Sink into warrior two on the other side. So now my left leg is the bent leg and my right leg is behind it. My left heel, the front heel, is in line with the arch of the back foot. Sink a little bit lower if you can into that front bent knee and keep your gaze forward over that front outstretched arm. Continue to lift through the pelvic floor, lift through the low abdominals. This is a great pose for endurance of the lower body. Keep breathing, and then straighten that bent knee and walk your feet in, rotating in and out with your hips. So kick out your legs, and again, release any of that pent up, built up tension. And we're gonna move into triangle pose. This is another great pose where your feet are nice and wide. You're going to turn out that right foot so it's pointing forward, and the left foot, same foot position as we did before. The front knee can be micro bent, just a little bit if you wish, for beginners. So you can bring that hand right above your knee, the micro bent knee, and you can look up toward the upper arm, or you can look forward, or you can also look down at the floor. Now another option is to place your hand on your shin with your front leg straightened at the knee. You want to think about lengthening through the side body on both sides of the torso, so the lower side and the upper side, lengthening to the side. You can also do the same pose with a block. So again, lengthening that body toward the side and reaching the upper arm up toward the ceiling. Look forward or down at the floor. The front knee, again, can have a tiny micro bend in the knee. If you feel at all like you're hyperextending the knee, definitely micro bend that front knee. We don't want you to feel like you're hyperextending or straining the back of that knee at all. Just make sure that you feel like you're lengthening the side body on the right and left side. Triangle pose is one of my favorite poses for stretching the inner groin and also the outer hip of the back leg. To come out of the pose, bend the front knee, straighten your leg, and then turn to do the exact same thing on the other side. So again, you can do any of the variations that I showed. Regardless, you're going to lift through the core, lengthen out to the side, and then tip. So you're looking up toward the upper arm, or you can look ahead, or you can look down toward the floor. You can either have your hand above the knee with the leg slightly bent, or below the knee on your shin, or on a block. No matter what you're doing with your lower hand, be sure that you are lengthening through both sides, the right and left side of your body, of your torso. And again, your head position, it just really depends on what you're comfortable with for your neck. You can look up toward the outstretched arm that's reaching up toward the ceiling, or you can look forward, or you can look down toward the floor. Whatever you do, just keep breathing steadily, knowing that your practice will change over time, feeling this in your inner groin area and also your outer hip area of the back leg. Okay, final breath here. Bend that front knee and come on up to a standing position. Again, walk those legs in, rotating at the hips, kick out your legs, and get ready. Move your blocks out of the way because we're going to go down onto the ground for some floor work. So come on down onto your hands and knees to get started. We're going to begin with cat and cow pose, a wonderful stretch and strengthener for the front of the body. So inhale, look forward, and exhale, tuck your tailbone under and pull your belly button toward your spine. Inhale, look forward, arch your back. Exhale, round your back, tuck and pull your belly inward toward your spine. Inhale, arch your low back. Exhale, round your back and pull your belly button in toward your spine. Inhale, arch your low back. Exhale, pull your belly button toward your spine and tuck your tail under. Okay, come down onto your elbows, forearms parallel, and we're going to move into puppy pose. I'm going to show you a way that might feel better for you. If you have tight shoulders at all, you're going to want to support your head on a yoga block. Notice how my hips are over my knees. This should feel really nice on your pelvic floor, a lengthening in your pelvic floor muscles. Feel that your sit bones are widening apart, and it's like you're really shining your pelvic floor back on the wall behind you. Breathe really deeply and easily here. It's a great stretch for the pelvic floor, the low back, the shoulders. Again, the block under your head is just an option, but it might be comfortable for you. Take one or two more nice deep breaths, slow and easy, widening those sit bones apart, pulling your belly button to spine as you exhale. Feel this deep, deep hip stretch. And then crawl up, move the block out of the way, and we're going to ease ourselves up into downward facing dog. So lift your belly button toward your spine. One arm at a time comes up and then one leg at a time comes up. Your knees do not have to be straight, they can be bent. Just think about keeping your spine straight, your tailbone lifted toward the ceiling, sit bones widening apart. Breathe deeply. Every time you exhale, really pull the belly button toward the spine. It's also a nice time to really engage your pelvic floor as you exhale. Engage your pelvic floor and pull your belly button to the spine. Downward dog is a wonderful strengthener for the shoulders and a great stretch for the back of the legs, the low back. Now walk carefully, walk your feet up, up, up toward the middle, and then we're going to come down into a deep squat stretch. I am showing how you can do this on 2 yoga blocks. You're sitting yourself down onto the 2 yoga blocks. I'll show you also in a second how you can just use 1 yoga block if 2 is too much. But either way, you're going to want to really think about straightening your spine and lifting your heart. Use your hands on your legs, on your knees for leverage to really lift your heart and straighten your spine. Here I am showing you the same thing from one yoga block instead of two. Just be sure that you take any rounding out of your spine. Don't let your low back round. Keep nice and tall and lifted. When you found that nice tall and lifted position, you can relax your arms in any position they want to be in. And I want you to take this time to do 2 to 3 full and complete Kegels. Kegel exercises. So it's an inside pelvic floor muscle exercise where you squeeze and lift the pelvic floor muscles toward your head and then fully release. Do it again like you're pulling a marble up and away from the ground, and then you're releasing that marble back down to the ground. Again, this is a great position to do this exercise because you can really feel those pelvic floor muscles contracting and then fully releasing when you're in that deep squat stretch. Take the block away and come back into the downward dog position we were just in before. Again, great back of the body stretch and shoulder strengthener. Walking out the legs, bending one knee at a time. And then bend both knees and just work on making your spine straight and your tailbone rotating up toward the ceiling, sit bones widening apart. Your heels can be lifted off the floor. Again, knees can be bent. Deep breaths. Every time you exhale, lift the pelvic floor and pull the belly button to spine. Couple more deep breaths in this downward dog position. Great strengthener, great stretch. Tailbone lifting toward the ceiling, belly button pulling in as you exhale. Now look forward and, like before, walk forward 1 foot at a time, walking forward, bend your knees, and sit down. We're going to move into a butterfly position or Baddha Konasana. You can sit on the edge of your yoga block as I'm showing here, or you can roll up a yoga mat or place a folded blanket under your hips. That just helps if you're tight through the hips. It props you up and it feels really nice. It's a nice way to open things up. So this butterfly stretch, you are just opening your feet apart, placing the soles of your feet together, and then opening your feet apart like a little book. You can even massage the arches of your foot, and you're hinging forward from your hips. This is a deep inner thigh and groin stretch. You can see that my knees are flopping apart. I am leaning forward. If you can, press your elbows down into your inner thighs, then that will deepen that inner groin stretch. Just make sure that for this, you're hinging forward from your hips and you're not rounding your spine. You're nice and straight through the spine, lifted through the heart. You can stay in that position. I'm just showing you how it can also be done without a block. So it can be done just on the floor, elbows pressing into the inner thighs, spine straight, heart lifted, hinging from your hips, and folding into that deep inner thigh and groin stretch. Feels so good for the pelvic floor and the hips. Go ahead and come out of this pose. We're going to carefully come down onto our backs. So come down onto your side and then roll onto your back. And we're gonna windshield wiper those hips side to side. So one knee down and then the other knee down. Pressing the knee down on one side and then the other. Back and forth, just lubing up those hip joints. And this time hold it, so that this time it's my right knee is actually pointing toward the corner of the left corner of my yoga mat. Really press it down toward the bottom corner of the yoga mat. Now my left knee is pressing down toward the right lower corner of my yoga mat. Really pressing it down toward the bottom. Deep, deep front of the hip and inside hip joint stretch. Okay, come onto your back. We're going to move into some bridges. Great strengthener for the back side of the body. So just roll up one vertebrae at a time, pressing down into your feet and your heels. Really pressing down into your heels, maybe even lift your tiptoes up off the ground. Feel that you're lifting, lifting, lifting through the back body, stretching through the front body. Keep breathing. Think about lifting your chest or your heart toward your chin. Lift your heart toward your chin and breathe steadily. Keep it up. One more breath. and then roll it down one vertebrae at a time. Let your knees flop apart and just rock side to side. Release the pelvic floor muscles, which are actually quite active during this bridge pose. So again, engage your pelvic floor, engage your core, and roll up one vertebrae at a time into bridge. Press down into your heels, press down into your feet. Maybe lift your tiptoes off the floor so you're sure you're not grasping and gripping with your toes. Really stretch through the front of the body, strengthen through the back of the body, and breathe steadily. Feel that you're lifting your heart toward your chin. Last breath here, and then roll it down. Just like before, let your knees flop apart and rock side to side. Release the pelvic floor, release the hips, release into this position. Should feel really good. Deep belly breath. Now engage your pelvic floor, pull in your low abs and lift one more time into the bridge. Hold it, lift your tiptoes off the ground, knees are directly over your heels and your feet. Lifting, 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 breathing. Lift your chest toward your chin. Stay nice and high, stretching through the front and strengthening through the back. Great pelvic floor and buttocks and hamstring strengthener. And last breath here, go ahead and roll it down. Just like before, let the knees flop apart, rock side to side. And we're going to move on into another form of bridge, this time with your right leg crossed over your left. So gather your knees together and cross your right leg over your left. Come up into a bridge where you're really pressing down into that left leg and foot. You're pressing down as you lift your bottom up. 8 times we're doing this, lifting and lowering. 4 more. 3. Exhale as you lift. 2. And last one. Now thread your hands through the separation between your 2 legs and thread the needle into a nice outer hip stretch. You're going to feel this in your right outer hip, and it's a really lovely stretch to just relax into. Feel this again in your right outer hip and your left bottom cheek, and maybe even your low back a little bit. Breathe deeply. If you want to, you can press outward against that right inner thigh with your right elbow. Keep breathing. A couple more nice deep full breaths. And then lower the leg. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side after a quick little break. Shake out your legs, straighten out your legs, shake everything out. Again, releasing that tension. It's so important to do that periodically. So now crossing the left leg over the right and beginning with those 8 bridges. So pressing down into the right foot. Exhale as you come up. And 4 more. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, this time we stretch. So thread the needle there, thread your hands through the hole between your 2 legs and pull that knee toward your chest. Just like on the other side, if you want to and you have the space, you can press your left elbow into the inner thigh of the left bent leg. And that's going to help open up the groin a little bit more and just kind of increase the stretch. Primarily, you'll feel this stretch on the outside of the left hip and also in the buttocks of the right side and maybe even a little bit in the low back area. Keep breathing and releasing into this really nice stretch. Just think we're almost done. You've learned some great foundational poses. You've strengthened, you've stretched the pelvic floor and the hips. You've worked on your balance. Go ahead and flop the knees apart, side to side. You can straighten them out in front of you and just wiggle and jiggle them around a little bit. Feels really good. Turn your palms up toward the ceiling. shift around a little bit, and let's get ready for a brief Shavasana. And then we're going to move into one more round of stretches. So really knot those hands into fists, lift them up off the ground, and then let them flop down, relaxed to your sides. Engage your core muscles, bend your left leg, and then lift your right straight leg off the floor. Point and flex at the ankle. Really activate that right leg. The left leg is just supporting you, being bent. The right leg is strong and activated, and then release it down to the floor, relaxed. Relaxing it. Now that relaxed right leg is bent for support. Engage through your core and lift your left leg off the floor, left straight leg. Bend and flex at the ankle, activating that left leg, bending and flexing, and then go ahead and let it flop down to the ground. Oh, relax everything, let it go. Let that right leg be relaxed once again. And in this position, this is called Shavasana, which is the closing pose. Usually we're going to do one more stretch after it, but this is a really nice way to close a yoga class. I want you to take 8 deep breaths. So on your own count, doesn't need to be exact, but about 8 nice deep breaths into your low belly, nice and even. You can make it even in and even out, like for example, 4 to 5 counts in, 4 to 5 counts out. Or you can make your exhale slightly longer. For example, 4 counts in and 7 to 8 counts out. Whatever feels good for you. Just try to really release into this pose, which can actually be one of the most complicated yoga poses as all, because you have to clear your mind and quiet your mind. So come on out of it. Go ahead and let your knees drop side to side. And we're just going to end with our final pose, which is just a knee to chest and a what I call frog pose, but frog pose on your back. So you can simply just hug your knees to your chest as I'm showing here. Or you can have your hands behind your thighs if it's too much to hug around your shins. Or if you want to try the frog pose, you thread your hands between your legs and then hold on to the outer feet or the outer ankles with your fingers, letting your knees flop apart. And this is a nice way to just do one final release of the inner thigh and groin area. Breathe deeply. Feel your low back pressing into the mat. Feel your pelvic floor released and open and relaxed. Feel that nice downward pull on your shoulders, releasing any neck and shoulder tension. Deep breath. And then very carefully bring those knees together and roll to your side. Take just one breath in a side lying position and just integrate this practice. Know that you've done something really good for yourself and be proud of yourself for making it all the way through. Carefully push yourself up to a seated position and end with 2 deep breaths in, arms overhead, and exhale, hands at your heart. Another 1 deep breath in, hands overhead, and exhale, hands at your heart. Beautiful job. You stuck with me to the end and I am proud of you. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, like and share any of my videos with friends who you think that they would help as well. And you can also check out my website, femfusionfitness.com, for more ways we can connect. Until next time, remember, eat clean, move every day, and you will shine brighter. Thank you so much for watching.